Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Beth Ann. Today I'm doing my December reading wrap-up. December was a great reading month for me, so here is my physical stack. I guess we've got 6 books in the physical stack, and then I have 4 other books. 1 was a Kindle read, I guess 2 were audio, and 1 is a book that I've actually already put into a little free library, so I no longer have a physical copy of it. But yeah, so I'm quite pleased with my month. There was 1 book that was awful. We'll get to that later. 1 book that was kind of meh, and the rest were all quite good reads. So let's dive into it. So the first book I finished in December is Winter's Heart, which is book 9 in Robert Jordan's not The Eye of the World. That's book 1. Oh gosh. Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. And so I'm not going to say much about it. It's book 9 in a 14-book series, but this is one where things have sort of picked up. I feel like I'm past the slog in the middle of the series. Some really exciting developments happened in this book, so that was definitely really enjoyable, and I'm about to start book 10. I'm reading these as a buddy read with a real-life friend who's not a booktuber. Hi, Zach, if you're watching this. So we're going to dive right into Crossroads of Twilight. So moving right along in that reread of that series. Then the second book that I finished is Moment by Wislawa Szymborska, or Chwila, or something like that in the original Polish. This is a translated collection of poetry. It's quite slim. There's only maybe 30 or so poems in here, but these were quite enjoyable. Her writing is very simple, but manages to pack quite a lot in terms of the observation that's packed into her simple language. So I've shared a few of my favorite poems from this collection in 2 earlier videos on this channel for Poetry Thursday videos that I posted in November and December, I think. So I'll put links to those down below if you want to just go watch a couple very short videos just to see some examples of this poetry. Szymborska was a Nobel laureate, so she's definitely a poet who's worth checking out. All right, then the next book that I finished in the month of December was Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and this is a book that I actually would like to do a standalone video about, so look forward to that. But this book was just amazing, and so I really want to just gush its praises in its own video. But it's sort of a mythic folklore from the Mayan culture in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. So I thought it was just beautifully done. The main character is just really compelling. It's essentially a quest. She's swept up in a conflict between 2 gods, and it sort of offers her a chance to really step into her own as a person. She's been really beaten down and oppressed for all of her early life. But she has like a spark and a willfulness to her, and so she gets to go on this quest and really sort of prove herself. So it was just wonderful storytelling, beautiful imagery in the writing, just absolutely gorgeous book. So I'll talk about this more in a future video. Okay, the next 2 books I finished I don't have physical copies of. One was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I've already done a standalone review of that, so I will post a link to that down below, but that was quite good as an exploration of how Western cultures, and I'm including Japan in that, I mean developed industrialized cultures really put a lot of pressure on people to meet specific societal norms with respect to the type of work that they do and whether or not they have a family and get married. So it was a really great exploration of those themes. And then I listened to a book on audio, Reamde by Neal Stephenson. I don't see Neal Stephenson talked about much on BookTube, which I've been a little bit curious about, I guess, because I follow a lot of like fantasy, sci-fi, speculative fiction folks who read those books. And Neal Stephenson is certainly sort of at the nexus of all of those genres, I feel like, and is a giant. Yeah, why is he not talked about much on BookTube? What am I missing? Anyway, his books are often, they usually fall short of the mark for me. I often find them really interesting and thought-provoking, but they often sort of fall apart at the end, or things are like wrapped up too quickly in a way that's very unsatisfying. That actually wasn't true of Reamde, but Reamde was different than a lot of his other books. So it's very action-packed, as many of his books are, But in Reamde, there was nothing beyond the action. It's just sort of an action-packed crime thriller, international plot with a fair amount of people getting swept up in things just by being at the wrong place at the wrong time. But there was nothing else to it, whereas in a lot of his other work, it's action-packed and feels like a thriller in similar ways, but there's often much broader things going on in his commentary on tech or on society, things like that. And this book had none of that. So if you want action-packed thriller, I don't even know if thriller is the right word, but suspense, because you are sort of on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen to the characters that you're starting to care about, then Reamde is a really fun read. But it's also Neal Stephenson, so every single possible microsecond of action is described in great detail. Oh, there's my motion sensor light, and it doesn't... It's a new light bulb my dad got me for Christmas, and it's supposed to be on a motion sensor, and it turns off after 10 minutes of inactivity, and I'm not here being inactive. There it goes. Anyway, it's been very on the fritz since I put it in after Christmas. Anyway, so Reamde will be like, you know, he's describing in an action fight scene. It's not even just like, oh, he pivoted and blocked. It's like you hear about like what every muscle of the person is doing. So it's too much. It's like a 40-hour audiobook, but I still really enjoyed it. But I'm not going to give it like a 5-star ultimate rating because it was just, while I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy has too much time on his hands. But anyway, it was fun. So that's those. Okay, back to the physical books. So the next book I finished is The Library Book by Susan Orlean. I read this with Margaret Pinard and other folks in her book club, which she runs through Patreon. So I will post a link to that down below if you want to join us. We had excellent picks in 2021, and the book club is continuing into 2022. And by the time this December wrap-up comes out, I have already posted 2 videos where I just share some brief readings from the early parts of this book. So most of the book is focused on a big fire in the Los Angeles Central Library in downtown Los Angeles that happened in 1986. And so Susan Orlean is going back and interviewing people about what happened on the day of the fire, some of the aftermath. But in the process of exploring this actual event of the fire and exploring a little bit of the life of the guy that they apprehended for the fire, but still there's no real resolution about whether or not he really did it. So it's sort of exploring that event, but then woven throughout all of it is just the central role that libraries can really play, especially in urban places, but just all the services that they can provide, and then also her own love of books and libraries and connection to them, which I really connected with. So in the 2 videos that I shared earlier, I shared just some brief readings from the early parts of the book where she's sort of framing, oh, there are all my little tabbies. Okay. I've been looking for my little tabbies. Anyway, she frames her whole exploration coming from that place of her own curiosity and love for books and libraries. This was an amazing read. Absolutely blew me away. Highly recommend if any of that sounds intriguing and you haven't already read this book. Moving right along. Okay, then I read Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. And as I was warned by BookTube, this book was absolutely phenomenal, blew my socks off. I'm going to reread it and reread it and reread it. And might be probably the best book I read in 2021 for a number of reasons. The gorgeous writing, the compelling subject matter, the way that it took things that I've kind of learned about in an intellectual way, you know, the idea of racism and systemic racism, but reframed them in a way that just makes so much sense. And even the things about thinking about race and racism, where it's like sometimes things don't quite gel, but thinking about it in terms of a caste system, really, I just feel like it all got driven home for me. Not to say that I understand everything or I'm an expert in any sense of the word, but yeah, I just love this framing of our society. And by love, I mean it's absolutely god awful that like it exists. We need to figure out a way to dismantle it. But the way of thinking about it and approaching it as a problem, that this is a caste system, I think for me at least it feels helpful and productive. it helps me more clearly identify my place in the world as a rich white woman, and figure out what I can do about that. I mean, you can't even, like, it's a better identification of the problem to me, honestly. So I just really appreciated it. So I think I'm going to do a standalone video of this, just to share some of the parts of this book that I found the most compelling. I just loved it. Again, like I said, with Gods of Jade and Shadow, I loved it so much. I want to be able to gush about it more. So I will probably do a standalone video about that. Okay. Right. So then the next book I finished. I was working more through my nonfiction November reads actually in December. So Caste was something that I'd wanted to read in November for nonfiction November. Then I also wanted to read the next book on my list, which is Outer Banks Tales to Remember. Put up a picture. And Outer Banks Tales to Remember is just a short collection of essentially short stories that are sort of folk tales and ghost stories from communities in the Outer Banks. And I went into it not knowing anything about it, and I sort of expected it, for no reason really, to have more of a basis in the natural history of the Outer Banks. And it was very heavy on the folk tales and the ghost stories, which were interesting, but just wasn't really my thing, I guess. So this is the one that I've already put in a little free library. I'm glad I read it, but I'm never going to return to it. So if you're curious about sort of that, I mean, a lot of the tales had their roots in the early pioneer culture. It would have been different if it were like indigenous tales and folklores that I would have been a lot more interested in, but not the sort of legends that arose from the early pioneers and settlers in the Outer Banks. Then, one of the most awful books I've ever read, Bob Honey Who Just Do Stuff, which was written by Sean Penn. It was originally published under a pen name, Pappy Pariah, but then he did admit that it was his book, and later editions have had his name on it. He's trying his hand at being a novelist. And the first little bit of the audiobook, I was sort of wondering, like, is this going to be good? Because it felt like a satire. It sort of opens where we get this middle-aged man who kills elderly people because they're a drain on a resource-strapped society. So it sort of felt, in that sense, along the lines of, oh gosh, what's that really famous satire where they're eating babies? Classic English satire. Anyway, felt a little bit along the lines of that, where it's like so absurd that you're like, of course this wouldn't happen. But commenting on like climate change and like that sort of thing. Very briefly, I thought it might be satire in that vein, and I think it was partly intended to be. But way too much was just packed in, and it tried to go in like all kinds of other directions. It tried to make this character a lot more complex than it should have been if it was gonna be a good satire, if that makes any sense. It was just bad, and it was just overwritten. The sentences were just like chock full, so I'd be sort of listening to it and be like, did I even just hear a sentence? And to think about it, and it was bizarre. Yeah, not put together well, not executed well. Yeah, and it just like didn't go anywhere, like felt confusing, just deliberately to be confusing. So yeah, do not recommend. Hard pass. All right, and then I ended the month with a lovely read, which is this short novella. This is Jamilia, and I don't know how to pronounce the author's name. Chingiz Aitmatov, a very classic. Oh gosh, Kyrgyzstan. He was from Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyzstani author. And I had read one of his books actually about 10 years ago. I think it's called The Eye of the Skull or The Place of the Skull. And I actually don't have it anymore, but it was, I really liked that book. I don't think I gave it like a full 5 stars, but it might have given it 4 stars. I probably have it on Goodreads. But it was just beautiful. The prose, his prose is pretty sparse. There's not a lot of like extra words and adjectives and stuff, but so much of his work, and it's true of this one, well, I'm saying so much of his work, so much of that one novel that I read and this, he just has these, just very simple, evocative descriptions of the landscape, sort of this Central Asian steppe. And it's just utterly gorgeous. And then not much is happening with the people, which, if I remember, was sort of my main thing with Place of the Skull, was it was supposed to be like a novel about people. And then as a biologist, I didn't mind that it was mostly about the environment, the steppe, you know, but it did feel sort of lacking in that way, but like it was just beautiful to read. And so I had the similar feeling about Jamilia. So I heard that this existed from Jen over at Remembered Reads. She read it several months ago in 2021, and essentially said the same thing, that like it reads, this is supposed to be a love story between two people, but it really reads more like a love story between the author and the natural landscape that he sets it in. And that was totally true for me as well. So this is supposed to be a love story. A love story sort of happens in that there are two people who start out not in love and then they end up partnered at the end of the book. But you actually like sort of see so little of the development of that relationship, even though the story is told through the eyes of a young boy who is accompanying the two soon-to-be lovers every day. They're working together, and so you're sort of, he's telling you that this is happening. Well, he's not even telling you that this is happening. Like, there's just sort of subtle cues. You sort of know what's going on, but then it's like, all of a sudden they're together, and it's like, when did they have a conversation? So yeah, so the love story part was lacking. So again, not going to be a 5-star book because I felt like I was told it was a love story and then it wasn't. But beautiful writing, good glimpse of Soviet life on sort of a collective farm, and some of the workday stuff that went on. And yeah, beautiful descriptions of the Central Asian steppe. So definitely recommended, and I really enjoyed it. All right. Whew, I've been talking for a while. So that was my December reading month. I am, of course, still reading in January. I'm a bit disorganized these days. We are in quarantine, hence filming at night. And I've got my daughter at home all the time, so everything is disorganized and chaos. But I'll still be making content one way or another, just a little bit slower than I often do. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for sticking around if you stuck around this long. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.